back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. It says so out on the wrapper. Man, we've done everything but get to watch baseball be played, and I haven't talked to a whole lot of sports people in the last 3 or 4 months. This week I sort of ramped up and said, yeah, it's 4th of July, baseball, apple pie, some crab cakes, and I'm going to talk baseball. Pedro Gomez has covered baseball, loves baseball, his boy plays baseball, we love baseball together. Man, I thought of you. You're in the top 10 of guys that I want to talk to about this. And I also wanted to talk to people that live in other places and have been around this. What a mess this would have been had you and I talked 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? So now they're going to play baseball. Can they pull this off? And first off, welcome in, man. I mean, it's been a long time. I think the last time we were together, we were talking football after a Cardinals game. But you cover baseball. I cover baseball. It's our life. We're going to play baseball, Pedro. How about that?
Well, I would say we're going to try to play baseball. Who knows whether they're actually going to. I mean, July 23rd is more than 3 weeks away, and, boy, you just hope that they can get to the starting gate. And if they do get to the starting gate, Nestor, who knows if they can get how far in or if they can even reach the finish line. We've seen that the virus it just plays no favorites.
Well, are you skeptical? I am. I've sat here, and it's one of the reasons I haven't sat around talking about the Ravens getting Calais Campbell. You know what I mean? It's sort of, what difference does it make if they're not going to play? And I have flights to Houston for the Ravens and Foxborough and all the sort of usual suspects, but I'm not really expecting to do that any more than I'm expecting next week to take that Stones flight I was going to take down to Atlanta.
Yeah, it's just showing its strength, and the leagues are the first ones to say, okay, we've got to stop, which they did a few months ago. And now I know a bunch of leagues are trying to start, and let's just see what happens. I mean, they're going to try. Baseball rosters are big. The training staff, the coaching staff, those are making even larger. And we've seen that the larger the group that's together, the more possibility there is of the virus, rearing its ugly head and affecting situations. So, baseball is one of those sports where it's almost like any sport in the sense that you can't have 27 or 28 of the 30 clubs playing. You have to have all 30. And if there is an outbreak in 1, 2, 3, 4 of the clubs, well, the whole thing's a house of cards and it just collapses. So, I'm hopeful. But at the same time, I'm very skeptical because we just haven't seen progress being made.
Pedro Gomez is our guest. You can follow his world out at the mothership at ESPN as well as out on Twitter, of course, at Pedro Gomez ESPN. Give me a little look at your family. You're one of the people I call because I was trying to come up with a variety of different stories. And you have a son that's an aspiring major leaguer. You have spent your life covering this, covering all the labor discord, covering championship teams and dirty cheating players, all of this, right? And you sit in the middle of this where every Zimmerman that says, I'm not going to play, you sort of know the player, and then you're in the family. Give me COVID for the Gomez family over the last 5 months.
I mean, thankfully, we're all still safe. It's me, my wife, and our 3 kids, and our 3 kids are between 19 and 25, and the 25-year-old is the one who got drafted in 2017 out of the University of Arizona by the Boston Red Sox and has risen every year that he's been in the minors, reaching high A last year in Salem, Virginia, and this spring he was off to a great spring. He had been invited to 5 big league games. You know how they'll pull in minor league players to big league games. So he had been pulled up 5 times this spring, and things looked really, really good. And then all of a sudden, the brakes got slammed. And so he's been home since March. He continues to work out. But, we know that the minor league season was never going to happen. It officially got canceled yesterday. And he has not stopped working out. He still worked out even last night. He throws 4 times a week. He throws a bullpen or 2 a week. I guess in a way, you don't know what's going to happen. Look, if a club has the virus strike through and maybe 15 players have to go, well, they may have to say, okay, who are the next 15? And maybe my son is one of those. Who knows? But he's not going to stop working out, at least not for the time being. But it's difficult because his trajectory was pretty good, Nestor. It looked promising.
This is not the time you need a season taken away from your boy, right? Literally.
But the timing is horrible for a lot of kids. A lot of kids didn't get to play their senior year of high school.
Hey, guys get injured all the time and have a year taken away, right? So that
yeah, absolutely, and it just never happens as a group, and that's
unless you're the Homestead homies. But I'm just taking you back in the Wayback Machine, there, buddy.
So who knows, Nestor, what's going to happen? He did survive the purge of the minor leagues 2 weeks ago when all those players were released. So that obviously is a positive sign. But there's just no way to know what's going to happen, and I guess all he can do is continue to work and hope for the best.
All right, man, we'll get to baseball, but play proud papa here. Five times did he toe the rubber in an actual worn by my cousin Luis Aparicio Red Sox jersey? And has that moment occurred yet?
It did. He faced the Tampa Bay Rays in a game, and it was on TV. I was watching. I was a nervous wreck. He came in with 2 outs in an inning, got out of the inning, and but he did appear in a big league spring training game.
Fort Myers, where was it?
Actually, they were in Tampa. It was Port Charlotte.
Port Charlotte.
Tampa. Yeah, it was a Tampa home game.
Port Charlotte's a little weird, man. I've been there, and they have the alligator in the lake sign out in front, and I'm like, no, thank you in Port Charlotte. My mother-in-law lives near Port Charlotte, so I know Port Charlotte. He is Pedro Gomez. You can find him at ESPN. You can find his boy, hopefully, towing the rubber soon in maybe Camden Yards, somewhere down the line. What do you make of all the labor? I just had John Pessa on earlier, and I'm talking to some young old-timers. He wrote a book on it, and you and I go back to Lords of the Realm and John Hellier. You cover it. Your boy's a part of it, and, hopefully we'll hit the lottery at some point and get that 4-year, $28 million deal with the Giants or whatever that thing would be, right? But watching this and watching players and owners and players, this fight 30 years ago was owners on owners, right? And I'm in a city where, D'Angelo's boys probably don't want to play baseball this year. I mean, there are probably 8 or 10 or 12 places. Oakland, they don't want to play this year. And the fight being so out in the open while the country's stacking up body bags, on Long Island, it's crazy, right? I mean, and it's such a black eye for a sport that continues to go back to the well of not such good PR, Pedro.
Well, and I think that's what made it more difficult for a lot of fans this year, because back in '94, when you and I were covering that, stoppage of play with no World Series, that was money on money. That's what it was. This time it was so much worse in the sense that people have lost jobs. People are in dire straits, and here you have this $11 billion a year industry that can't get its stuff together just to say, okay, we're going to play. And even at the end, there was no agreement. I know that they're going to play, but there was no agreement. The players' the owner's last proposal, the players rejected, and then the owners said, okay, then we're implementing a 60-game season. So there was no agreement, which means a grievance will still be filed at some point by the Players Association against the owners. We're not done. We're not done with this particular ugly incident.
We're never done, are we? It's Hatfields and McCoys, right?
No, but we did have peace for a long time. There was labor peace for a long time. And now, the collective bargaining agreement expires at the end of the 2021 season. Where are they going? And if you just judge it by what we've seen here in the last 2 months, it doesn't look like we're going to a good space.
Pedro, last week I went on vacation with my wife. We drove down to the Outer Banks, and we took the back roads. So the back roads from Baltimore is down 301. I went through Bowie. I crossed the bridge into Virginia and went through Norfolk. We stayed
Yep.
in North Carolina. We came back up through Salisbury, right? And I thought, wow, I just did an Oriole minor league tour, and you add Aberdeen
Yeah.
had I gone north, right? And this is where your boy's plying his trade, trying to you hope your boy gets to pitch in Norfolk soon because it's the next step to Fenway Park or wherever he's going to go, right? And whatever deal they'll send him in on.
I watched him pitch in Frederick, Nestor.
Well, right. So there's another great place. So all of that being said, at the back of this $11 billion banana that they've all built, now they want to sort of come in and Tanya Harding it at the knees after 100 years to rip teams out of these places. It really feels rudderless to me, and I have no feeling one way or another about Rob Manfred. I've met him one time. He was nervous as hell in the lobby of the Hyatt when he got the job 5 years ago this summer. It's next door to where I lived, Pedro. I may have saw you there that day. But the only thing I remember about him is in the early part of his tenure, I remember he was sort of the loud Chihuahua pit bull sort of guy at a podium in front of the media, being the lawyer guy. That was my first entree to him. And I guess that, maybe that was the first entree to other people in labor given that job. But this thing's been, I do wonder, who's the spiritual leader of all of this? Who's the uncle that's going to come in and try to make sense to all these lawyers and all these MIT nerds that have kind of wrecked baseball for me? And I'm 52 and I live 2 blocks away from the ballpark. Now they're going to implement rule changes. We're not going to recognize it. I just want to know when they want me back 162 times. I feel a little lost as a fan in all of this.
I don't know that there is that person right now in the commissioner's office or among owners. I did a list of back in '94, there were 28 teams. There weren't 30 like there are now because the D-backs in Tampa didn't exist. And of those 28 owners, 24 are gone from that time in the sense of, now some of them are still in the families, like the Steinbrenners, the Angelos, those where the family still owns the
Most
team.
of that's gone, though. The baseball we knew is gone.
The turnover has been, 90% of the owners from that time period of the 94 strike are gone. And
so's that bad blood in that way, right? That familial thing that they had with Charlie Finley that went on forever. Probably in the same way the NFL no longer has Al Davis to kick around. They at least can try to put a united front together, right?
Yeah, but it also leads you to believe that these owners haven't experienced that work stoppage and the ugliness, and they don't know. They don't know what they don't know, so to speak. And
that Max Scherzer's pissed off because Mark Belanger was pissed off, who was pissed off because Andy Messer, literally, and having those guys in their ear to some degree, right?
Well, yes, and there's been turnover both on the Players Association side as well as the ownership side, and the participants today don't really know how damaging it is to stop the sport. And you almost have hardliners who say, you know what, screw it. Let's just not play and we'll see what happens. Well, they don't remember because they weren't around at the time on the inside to know the damage that can be done.
They can ask anybody in Montreal.
Of course, but it almost seems like we're doomed to repeat history because nobody is looking at that history, and that's probably the saddest part here.
Pedro Gomez, one of my favorite people to chat with. He's out in the desert waiting on baseball like all the rest of us. You can find him at Pedro Gomez, ESPN, out on Twitter, and, of course, at the Mothership. For you and, Arizona and hot spots and what baseball could have done, and could they sequester in Arizona and Florida and try to just play a 60-game season, that seemed to me to be a hell of a lot more sensible, even if they're using Palm Springs or something, you know what I mean? That felt to me to be more rational than what they're trying to do. And again, I keep asking who's the uncle, and I think when the NFL, I think Roger Goodell calls Paul Tagliabue, and I think there's a bunch of sane sort of people to some degree that they try to talk to each other, and there's an honest difference of opinion between Jed York and Robert Kraft that sort of comes across sometimes in what they do, and I have no excuses for the Colin Kaepernick thing, but when I think about what they're doing in eliminating minor league baseball and running the rules of the game and the Frank Robinsons and the elder statesmen, maybe the Joe Torres or whatever, in regard to doing this, who does drive the train, Pedro, as far as you know? Like, who is the uncle making the decision? Who's the Wizard of Oz behind all of this to say this is a good idea, this is a bad idea?
It's about 8 to 10 owners, and they're the ones who are really driving the train, so to speak. You've got a lot of owners who just sit on the sideline. You've got these 8 to 10 who are strong voices, and then you've got a commissioner who fully recognizes his employer are those 30 owners. That's why he has his job. Those are his bosses. The players are not his bosses. The fans are not his bosses. Manfred's bosses are those 30 owners. So whatever the 30 owners decide on collectively, that is exactly what Manfred is going to do. And, say what you want about Bud Selig, the previous commissioner, and I know he didn't have a lot of fans everywhere, but I don't think anybody could ever question Bud's heart was always in the right place when it came to the game. The game was in his soul, and I don't know that necessarily is the case anymore with a lot of people involved.
And boy, it feels that way, brother. I mean, I'm my name's Aparicio. I'm in the sports business. I feel locally here like these kids, they just don't. They don't care. I mean, can you imagine if you're Peter Schmuck and you're still here doing this 30 years later, having witnessed what this franchise used to be and what it's become? And, the dark side of this is I've been on the radio every day since 91, since there were no Ravens, since there was no Camden Yards, and watching the end of Camden Yards of a lease and thinking about the promise, what it was supposed to bring, in the same way when Buck Showalter picked out the tiles, out there for your place in Arizona, what a Major League Baseball franchise and the Garagiolas and what they expected it to be, what Colangelo promised the citizens of the desert and what they've gotten, whatever that is. Angelos didn't make the deal, right? That was all Lucchino and EBW, and Marty Conway comes on all the time and talks about it with me. But I think about the 30 years and, I'm very worried this team's going to wind up in Nashville or Portland or some godforsaken place because I'm wondering who's going to come in to save it because it's not the tens of thousands of people who care about it anymore, Pedro, because that doesn't exist, man. It really doesn't.
God, I can't even imagine the Orioles not being in Baltimore.
Nobody can imagine the Colts, man.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point right there. But my God, the Orioles are such a fabric of that city and that area, and
I think so.
God, that would be sad. That would truly be sad.
If we look at the Nationals,
in this day and age, it would not be surprising because the Seattle SuperSonics are the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I never thought I'd see that as well. So. It's mind-boggling that there's just tradition doesn't matter, history doesn't matter so much today, and maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm the old guy who doesn't understand why this can't work. But I do remember I was there the year Camden Yards opened. That was my first year covering the team, and I thought, my Lord, this is a cathedral. This place will be Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park. This will be the place that 80 years from now people are going to say, look what they did here. Look at this jewel that they built between these railroad tracks, and how perfect it was and is. And God, that saddens me to think that stadium may sit dormant someday soon. That would not be good.
Well, it's like our country and anything, right? It needs to be well led. And when you mention the St. Louis Cardinals and the way they've been run, over the last 30 years, and the way franchises have been run, that it does matter. And you look at Miami and Tampa and Arizona and Colorado and guys like you and me with a little more silver going on these days, but we remember when the Oakland A's were going to become the Denver Zephyrs or whatever they were going to, these other things that the San Diego Padres that never happened as the Washington Nationals in 1974. I've got the Dave Winfield cards, So
I do too.
Yeah, of course you do.
I have a Vicente Romo.
Of course you. I mean, we remember when Toronto.
The San Francisco Giants were going to move to Tampa.
The Chicago White Sox were going to move to Tampa, right? So
Yep, exactly.
So the things that might have, should have, could have, it never happened and whatever. In the modern era where you're telling me, you just told me 90% of the owners don't have any soft spot for Cal Ripken or anything, or crab cakes or Brooks Robinson. I do really worry about how depressed the industry is going to make itself during this period where the world's already sideways, right? And I don't know what that means, but they're going to try to play it. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but I don't think any of us think baseball is really well led right now. And certainly this would be a really good time for baseball to lead. I think over 100 years, they always like to say that they lead and that the country comes back as baseball comes back. I'd like to smell a little bit of that, Pedro,
Well, people a lot smarter than me say the exact same things that you're saying, that there is a lack of leadership, both in the commissioner's office as well as among owners. These are people whose opinions I trust greatly, who are saying this to me, and if they're saying it and they know the insides much more than I do, that's not a good place to be in. And who knows what the future will bring, because that tends to be what brings down institutions.
Well, and crisis management, right, is what we're talking about here in the modern era. And you don't know if they're good at crisis management until you have a crisis. I didn't know how I was going to handle my wife having leukemia until it happened twice, and then it just happens, And then you say, well, am I going to manage it or am I not? In the case of the Astros thing, to do a little bit of revisionist history, because, brother, we didn't even talk about that. January and February, there was not a baseball conversation I had that didn't lead and middle and end with that, especially given who's running the franchise here. And the pelts on their wall came from all of that and the stench from all of that. It is fascinating how quickly the cheating thing went away, at least for a while, right? And the Astros and the Yankees aren't going to be in the same room together anytime soon.
Yeah, and it has to do with circumstances outside of the game that have overtaken the game, and that's why the Astros conversation has kind of slipped to the back burner. And the fact that games will be played without fans means that once again they kind of receive a pass. And as we know, time erases all wounds. So if they were to start up with fans in 2021, I don't think it'll be the same, because I think a lot of fans are going to have a lot of trepidation. Do I really want to go to a game and expose myself, even if things are much better? I think there's going to be trepidation amongst a lot of fans at that point. So the numbers will definitely not be what they have been. The Astros conversation has slipped to the back burner easily.
Pedro Gomez does baseball better than anybody. Follow him out in the desert at Pedro Gomez, ESPN, and at the Worldwide Leader. I hope to see you on my TV screen sometime soon, maybe doing some baseball. I know the one thing for all the reporter guys like you and me, nobody's going to see me slide in behind Earl Thomas on a Sunday Night Football shot anytime soon, because we're not – I don't think we'll ever be allowed next to a manager or a player. Literally, I think that's one thing that the leagues have always sort of wanted to do, that I don't think I'm in a room with John Harbaugh anytime soon, or Lamar Jackson.
It's going to be a while. It's definitely going to be a while. But I think that they will miss it, and they will try to rectify that, but it's not going to be for a while.
Well, good luck to you and Rio and everybody else out there. The whole family, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, and hopefully we'll get some baseball back, Pedro. It's always good to visit with you, pal.
Great to talk to you, buddy.
Pedro Gomez, I'm tipping my cap, Pedro. Just so you know,
me too.
For Poznansky and everybody out there running the Hall of Fame out in Kansas City. So I got a little hat tipping going on for Pedro Gomez. ESPN, find him out there at the Worldwide Leader. You can find Pizza John's in Essex. They've been doing it forever, as long as I've been doing it, since 66. I've been doing it since 68. 410-687-7733. I got to go get a cheesesteak with some provolone. I want fried onions. I want some mushroom in there. Lettuce, tomato, a little mayo. Do it up right. I'm going to get a pizza with mushroom, pepperoni, and sausage. That's what I'm going to do. Pizza John's, we love them. Follow them out on social media as well. And you can ship Pizza John's now, and you can ship Fadley's crab cakes for the 4th of July. So make sure you get out to Fadley's and do that. Also, it is Chicken Palooza at Royal Farms. Been talking about that. Free fried chicken on Monday the 6th. It's National Fried Chicken Day. Who knew? How could a guy that loves fried chicken as much as me not know it was National Fried Chicken Day on Monday? But it is. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast, Chicken Palooza. Take advantage of that, and they are donating to Johns Hopkins as well. So we've been talking about that. Shelby came on. You can find that out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. I am Nestor. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, everywhere you are, we are. WNST.net, AM 1570. Calm, local, baseball, football, and Baltimore positive.